you are having a great day and all are set for this exciting session ahead. Let me introduce you to our session speaker, Srinivasan Sekhar. Srinivasan is an Appium member and contributor to various open source projects like Appium, Selenium, WebDriver.io, etc. Srinivasan has worked extensively on testing various microservices, event-driven apps, and mobile and web apps. He specializes. Just a minute. I think I'm not audible. Uh, sh- so let me introduce to our session speaker Srinivasan. Srinivasan is a member and contributor to various open source projects like Appium, Selenium, WebDriver.io, etc. Srinivasan has worked extensively in testing microservices, event-driven apps, also mobile apps and web apps. He specializes in building automation frameworks and spoken at various conferences, including Selenium Conference, Appium Conference, Agile India, etc. He currently works as a test consultant, a lead consultant at Thoughtworks. Thanks a lot for joining us, Srinivasan. We are ecstatic to host you. Before we begin, a few suggestions for all our participants. At the end of the session, we will be taking some questions, so feel free to add those questions in the chat. For all of you, make sure that you have your notepads handy. This session is your front row ticket to know how to contribute to Appium's open source ecosystem. Watch as we will dwell into Appium's code base, offering our guidance and finding out opportunities for improvements, submitting PRs, and collaborating effectively with community and much, much more. Now, please join me in welcoming Srini. Hi, Srini.
Thanks, Bash. Thanks for the intro. Hi, everyone. Hope you all able to hear me well and hope you are all doing good. Thank you so much for tuning in and trying to take the first step of contributing to open source. Thanks, Bash. I will go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, hope my screen is visible.
Yes, Srini.
Yeah. So, to set the expectations upfront for contributing to Appium's open source ecosystem, Appium has evolved a lot over 8 years. Uh, I'm not sure, just to start with an interesting fact about Appium. Before it's called Appium, which is the Selenium for apps, Dan and Jason were interacting to figure out what's the name that we could keep for this small handy tool. The first name that they both have agreed upon initially was Applecart. In fact, if you don't know the history, it's all started with Applecart, and then there was uh, uh, about Appium, I mean, Apple's guidelines, and then there were things around naming. So they moved it to, they finally settled down to Appium, which is Selenium for apps. Thank you so much for joining in for my talk about contributing to Appium's open source ecosystem. And the main goal or the idea behind this next 30 minutes is to basically give an intro about how does the code base of Appium looks like, and if you have to start contributing, what's a good place to start with, how you could create basically how you could create your own contributions to the Appium ecosystem, or it could be a new plugin creation as well. I would like to share some of the plugin ideas that I have in mind. Probably you folks can also contribute to it or create or work on top of it or work on it as well by the end of the session. And I'm not going to demo or run anything fancy today. Planning to start something small. To start with, basically, I started contributing to Appium probably 8 years back. down the line. It was a small change, which is node version upgrade in the Travis CA. I'm not sure how many of you are remembering this CA called Travis CA. So that's how it started. And then mostly I was a user, and then I became a member, contributor. Contribution starts small, so never think that it's not going to help community. Even a small start will have a greater ending. So make sure you fork the repository or try to create your own Appium plugin or an Appium driver. The idea behind this talk is to make sure you take the first step of contributing to open source. It could be an Appium, it could be Selenium, or it could be any repository. Being we are in the Hacktoberfest month, so we should. I mean, the first-time contributors, probably it will be really helpful. For anyone who is new to Appium, probably can also help understand how does the internals of Appium works well. And if you would like to know how it works, I think we should all get started with an architecture first before we get into a problem statement. I think we should understand about the architecture first before we dive deep into the code structure or creating an Android Appium plugin. Let's get into the architecture first. I think most of you know the Appium philosophy very well. Appium goes by the philosophy that you test the app that goes to be, that you ship. You're not going to change or add anything as SDKs inside your app. After testing, you're not going to remove anything. You're basically going to ship the same app that you're testing through Appium. So to start with in the architecture, as you know, Appium has a client-server architecture, which means there are quite a few client language bindings, which means quite a few client language binding repositories. And we also have an Appium server written on Node.js, and which is W3C standard, and it is compatible with W3C. W3C is WebDriver protocol. And client sends the command to server, and server kind of accepts the command and decodes the command. The command could be, hey, I want to create an Appium Android driver with Espresso as a backend. As we probably know, if you have worked on Appium, probably know that Android supports two different backends. One is Espresso, another one is basically UI Automator 2. And Appium has drivers on top of Espresso called Espresso driver, which is a node module. And Appium also has a driver called the UI Automator 2 driver, and which is on top of UI Automator 2 backend from Android itself. So the client commands the server, I need to create an Appium driver session in Android platform with this automation backend. So Appium server kinds of decodes it and creates a session. Basically initialize the session with that specific driver, and the driver takes the responsibility of further sending the commands back to the application and the test inside your mobile device. Yeah. So to go to the next step, we also have a plugin-based ecosystem for last 1.5 years. Probably if you're using Appium 2.0 beta, probably a little over than 1.5 years. So Appium server also takes the responsibility to send the command, whether I have to send it to driver, or it's a new command, or it's an existing or modified command. Do I need to send it to plugins? It takes that responsibility. And plugin kind of does something extra, which Appium umbrella is already supporting, or modifies the commands which Appium already supporting, and sends the command to application under test. Once it does that updation, or probably let's say if the plugin is to modify a particular command called the find element, it does that and then gives it back to Espresso driver. If you're adding only console log or a specific portion, a minor improvement on the existing command, it does that portion and sends the command back to Espresso, and the Espresso driver takes care of sending it to the Espresso server, which is running inside your mobile device. And that takes care of communicating with the application under test. So the end app or the server that communicates to the application and the test is basically the Espresso server, and not the client command, not the Appium server, not the Espresso driver itself. So there's some server, tiny server running inside your device, which talks to your application and the test. And we also have a plugin that could talk to your application, and the test through the Appium's Espresso server running inside your mobile device. So this is how the communication works in total. So Appium, to switch to the code base, Appium has evolved a lot over a period of 8 years or 10 years so far, from 2012 to 2023. Uh, and it also has shifted gears in terms of languages. It all started with Apple script from Dan, and then C#, then Python, and now we know Appium has rewritten in Node.js for quite some time, and architecturally it has evolved a lot, and the protocol as well evolved a lot, along with Selenium's WebDriver protocol has become a W3C standard. Appium kind of adopted it and proceeded forward as well. So when you write a test, the first thing that you might have seen is basically you might have used Android UI automator to options or Espresso options. In here, it's Espresso options and specify the capabilities. Basically, you specify what you want server to initialize, the Espresso server to take it up, and basically the basic commands in terms of app path, device name, etc. Right? So to switch to that, before that, I will like to take you through the code base of Appium. So Appium is kind of a monorepo, which basically has information about it's a monorepo which has several packages in it, starting with base driver. It's like a umbrella driver, and this has been implemented. Base driver has been extended by different drivers. One of the driver is Espresso driver kind of extends base driver, which is a separate node module and not part of it. Same way, there are drivers which Appium on its own GitHub organization supports, which is Espresso UI Automated 2 and XUI driver. And we also have a base plugin, which has been extended by several plugins that we have. One of the plugin we have here itself is, which is maintained by Appium itself, is images plugin. If you go through the plugin, the main class of the plugin, you would have seen that it extends base plugin. Same way, if you have seen Appium's drivers, it will definitely extend base driver. Base driver holds everything in terms of the defaults, commands, the routes. Basically, the specification is existing here. If you go to routes.js inside base driver, you might see all the different types of commands that Appium supports. So let's say you wanted to introduce a new command. A new command could be anything, which is basically a new functionality that Appium has never supported that you would like to introduce. And if it follows WebDriver spec, let's say there is a addition to the WebDriver spec, or something that is there in WebDriver spec not been implemented by Appium so far, and you would like to implement that, and all of those that are W3C routes you might see out here. Some which is old routes, not all drivers might be supporting it. By default, it is WebDriver W3C standard now. Before that, we were also supporting mobile JSON wire protocol, and you might see some commands under that as well. And if it's not part of Appium's WebDriver spec, we also have extension through mobile colon commands. You might have seen mobile colon Android shell. You might have seen a lot of mobile colon commands, right, which Appium supporting it. These are non-standard. It's not part of WebDriver 3 spec, W3C spec, which are non-standard commands that Appium support. For example, if you would like to know about a particular command, what it does, right? You can exactly go through the same. Let's say you wanted to do create session. I wanted to understand how does the create session works. So the endpoint that implements this is /session. If you see here, we have a create session, and you could go ahead and check this create session command implementation on that specific driver. It could be an espresso server, it could be an espresso driver, or it could be a 𝐒𝐫𝐢𝐳 driver. You can also go back and check what do we have in Android driver as well with respect to create session. You can go to Appium Android driver. Let's quickly check UI automated to driver or Android driver. So it will have its own implementation about create session. So each and every driver will have its own implementation of the way how it creates the driver. Same way each and every command would have been implemented on individual driver. So Appium's base driver holds the base, and all of these being extended by, it also has certain supporting commands. Appium also has other packages, which is basically fake driver. If you'd like to test create a driver, if you'd like to test it without even starting your emulator, you can Appium has harness commands to test your plugins even without starting your emulators or simulators in local. So quickly go through. So these are the list of commands which UI automated to driver kind of implements. So you see there are certain commands that are proxied over, which means the way how it sits is Appium's UI automated. As you know, Appium Android has two different drivers. One is Appium's UI automated to driver, and one is Appium's espresso driver. And we also have Appium Android driver, which holds there are certain things that are common between these two drivers. Those being holded by Appium's Android driver, and there are certain things that are proxied over directly, which doesn't have an implementation here. If there isn't an implementation, it is proxied over to the next set. So in just looking at create session, you could see there is this implementation of create session on the specific driver. So if you'd like to create your own Appium command, you have to add an entry here. Let's say that command is a W3C spec and it's not been implemented on a specific driver. So first thing first, check out if it is implemented, if it is there here and there is no implementation. So it all starts with routes.js, and then you also need to implement it as part of commands out here on that individual driver. So find element is actually being carried out here on the find. So likewise, we have several commands, and each of those commands have uh, their own functions out here where you could go ahead and implement. So to showcase a bit in terms of creating a plugin, or let's say if I wanted to create a new command to Appium, and which is a non-standard command. If it is a standard one, you just go ahead and update your spec, update the spec as per the W3C standard here. It's not implemented, update it here, and then go ahead and implement on the specific driver that you would like to do, be it Android or iOS. In terms of iOS, it's 𝐒𝐫𝐢𝐳 driver, right? So in terms of non-standard commands, I got a good example of how does a non-standard command can be implemented. Let's say we know an ADB command. You all know Appium supports executing an ADB command through shell, which is exposed as non-standard mobile : shell command. So if you do mobile : probably you might have seen mobile : shell and execute that piece of command. Let's say I have a test and I could say here, await, and this is a sample test from event, let's say shell, and you will just say the command here basically based on its own. I'm not aware of the complete syntax, probably mobile shell input, blah, 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 right? So if you would like to create if you'd like to create an create a non-standard mobile colon command, this is how the client sends it, right? So if you'd like to create, let's say, how do you create this or implement this? This is the client side code. How does the server side code looks like for this, right? We know create session now. How does it looks like? We have seen find element. How does it looks like? But how does the mobile colon command looks like? Or how do you want to implement it on this server end, which is basically on the driver side? So here's another example, small PR, which is from Michael, our one of our greatest contributor. And if you have a look at this, I hope you folks are able to hear me well. I see that. I'll just quickly switch off my camera to save some bandwidth. Cool. Hope you are able to hear me well, and I'll also switch to low bandwidth to save some bandwidth.
Yes, Srini, you are audible and seen as well.
So, yeah, thanks, boss. So if you look at the small PR, right, here Mykola is trying to introduce a mobile colon, which is a non-standard mobile endpoint, which is not part of a W3C standard, right? If you see here, he's trying to get the performance data. So this is one of the implementation. Okay, let me pick up CPU information. He's trying to get the CPU information, and the command, the commands, as I said, it goes and sits as part of library commands folder, and you create your own function or class out here, or you create your own file if it doesn't exist, that you feel that doesn't exist, and you can have your own implementation. Here is simple shell command. If you would like to implement it, probably you have to create a function accordingly, and then the implementation. So here the ADB shell coming from Appium also has another node module called Appium ADB, which is a wrapper on top of Appium. Wrapper on top of ADB. So you can use this method to execute any shell commands that you would like to. So basically, you could execute the shell commands in the same way how this function does. Let's say you wanted to get the CPU info. It is quite similar to running ADB shell dumps its CPU info. I have an emulator running. Do you want to try? Let's say I want to try ADB shell. CPU info. Cool. So it gives me the cell ADB. For this device, what's the CPU information as of now, right? So that's the same thing exactly being done by this exact command. So if you'd like to create, and if you know an ADB command which is not being supported, and if you think it makes a good value add for the community, either you can go by adding it directly under mobile colon endpoint, or you can create a plugin out of it. I'm not sure about how many of you are aware of a recent mobile colon command which is introduced by Appium, which will definitely benefit for you all. So we might have seen some pop-ups, right? Handling the pop-ups on the test automation code base is going to be one of the trickiest part, because we don't know when the OS pop-ups will come. Let's say it could be a pop-up could be from a broadcasted intent, or pop-up could be from a different app. When you are using a application under test, the pop-up might come from the OS, pop-up might come from different apps running in the background. A pop-up might come from a broadcasted intent from a different app, or broadcasted intent from the network provider, or it could be from an OS upgrade as well. But we never know how do we handle it, because we can't predict that, right? So we can schedule an event in Appium using mobile colon schedule, and you can schedule an event, and that will capture, it runs in an asynchronous way. And any command that you execute in Appium runs in a synchronous way, because we use client server architecture in REST API. So client will send the command, and the server will do the execution, and it process the command and then sends it back and say 200, 500, 400, depending upon the input and the state of the device and the state of the application and state of environment as well, right? So in that case, it is very synchronous. You have to wait. But in case, let's say you wanted to do something synchronously behind the scenes, you wanted to handle something asynchronously. So likewise, if you would like to, this is the command called mobile:schedule, which will help you to do schedule an event and let uh, your test code runs it. If you like to handle a specific pop-up that might come any moment in time when you are doing any other operation, this scheduler will keep looking for it, and you can even tune the seconds that you would like to look into. If you have not looked into that specific, if you have not tried it, I would say you could go ahead and try that out. Look out for our documentation. It has more information. It also has tests as well. How do you write a mobile::get schedule, where you will be able to handle this kind of asynchronous pop-ups that can come any moment in time. So coming back to the topic of mobile::commands, this command get CPU info is not part of our W3C spec, and this, so the entire crux of this command is just on the line number 317. The remaining is just about retrying and timing out after certain intervals. So same way, you add the command and then just add it to the list of commands that's been supported, and then export that command. And again, it's definitely required to write a test, and keep writing a simple test. It is just as easier as you could write. So basically, CPU infrared bind, and you like to tell the package name, because even here we haven't used the package name because I have only one device running up and running and one device that is connected up and running, which is our emulator. So that's the reason. But otherwise, package name is definitely, device and package name is definitely a must. Device name is definitely a must. Package name depends upon whether where you wanted to do what. So here you are getting the CPU info basically against that specific package. Yeah. So that's on the mobile: command. So we have seen two variations. One is about create session, and another one is about which is standard W3C command. Another one is about basically non-standard mobile::endpoints. Appium has tons of non-standard commands. The reason behind it could be that Apple and Android exposing that, but it's not part of the standard, right? Appium has its, Android has its own way of exposing it, and iOS, Apple has its own way of expressing a certain gesture or any commands that it supports internally. So Appium has to export it or through some other way. So it has to be through the mobile::Appium commands. Yeah, you will also see these mobile non-standard commands with. I just wanted to show you folks. Yeah, so this is one of the non-standard command that I'm talking about. So one is mobile::lock. So this is a non-standard command. It will have a prefix called Appium in its REST endpoint. Same way, all of these are non-standard commands. Get performance data type is the one that we have seen, which is deprecated, and it has been overwritten by get performance data here. Get performance data here. As simple as that. You create it and then run your test locally, and you have a great readme as well. Run your test locally and send out a PR. So next thing is about, let's say I wanted to, I don't want it to be a part of Appium's existing ecosystem. The Appium's own ecosystem or the code base. I wanted it to be plugin. If you feel that as a potential candidate for a plugin, we also have, I think me and Sai have created a template called Appium plugin template, which we all can utilize and create a plugin for any of the non-standard commands. Or if you like to override a standard, you can create a plugin out of it. And the basic first condition for it is, as like any driver that we implement will extend base driver, any plugin that we create, even the Appium's own image plugin extends the base plugin. Any plugin that we create will have to extend the base plugin. So I've created a simple plugin now. Before we go to the plugin, I'd like to showcase another one. Let's say I have another ADB command, which is basically to send some key events. You might have seen Android keys dot key event dot and the numbers in the Java client holder versions, right? Let's say you wanted to have a specific use case where you wanted to handle it as a plugin instead of sending it over to server or in drivers, right? I wanted to increase the volume. You see here? Yeah. I wanted to do a lock screen. I wanted to broadcast an intent. All of these being handled by ADB using key events. A broadcasting an intent could be an intent from a different app which comes as a pop-up, or broadcasting an intent could be to increase the volume. And if you have routed your device, you can even send broadcasted events of reducing your battery level, or probably going into switching into airplane mode. So I mean, I'm not talking about automated code. I'm just talking about the plain ADB commands that you could. ADB commands are quite powerful. So if you have rooted and you have security permissions uplifted, and you could do play around or send as any commands as possible, you can with your emulators or the real devices if the devices are rooted. So here in our case, I have 2 or 3 yeah. So I wanted to bring my app to the background and see what all the list of apps that are running in background. You can have a key event for it and shift between these. There are several key events that you could send. How about having a key event plugin, right? So the key events, you could send it basically through mobile colon shell and then input key event 187 as well. Just a basic example that I would like to showcase to you. So I've just cloned the Appium plugin template and have just modified the name of the key event plugin. And first thing first, we have to change the plugin name and the main class. Main class is nothing but an entry point for our plugin. So this is used to initialize the plugin to figure out where exactly the main class is. So main class is in plugin.js. It comes with a bare minimum. Maybe I'll just do a git stash just to showcase you folks. So this is how the template looks like. So you can go ahead and change the name, and second, you can go ahead and change the main class, and there are basic tests being given, and we also have a skeleton wherein it also imports the logo, which is another from another package called Appium. It is basically @Appium/support, or so now it has been that's a minor change out here. This also should work basically for us. So it's a logger provided by Appium. We also have Appium based plugin being extended, and which is template plugin. So before we get to the implementations of it, let's see what all I have to change. I have the main class, and I can give my own name, and we can change the template plugin here, and we have a constructor. Before we get there, let me reapply to save some time. So if you'd like to create your own command, here in our case, I'm going to create my own command. I'm not going to use mobile colon shell command, which has already been supported. I'm going to create a key event command. So here you could give, I mean, basically you have to give the API path here, right? So it's plugin key event, and the command that implements this is send key event. We have the implementation here. And we also need to execute an ADB command here, right? So as I said, Appium has internally a wrapper on top of Appium ADB. So we have something called Appium-ADB, which you just import, don't need to add anything else on top of our dependencies that we have. One thing that is mandatory is we need to add the peer dependency. So peer dependency should be Appium, and it comes by default if you import it. If you just go ahead and import Appium ADB, it comes by default. You don't need to add any other dependencies. So first thing first, we have to create an instance, and then you have to execute it. It exposes a shell command adb.shell, as quite similar to what we have seen here. adb.shell. Yeah. You construct the command and then send the command. So we know that it's going to be just key event. ADB shell input key event. So it's ADB input key event, and the event comes from the user. So we said these params are required, so it has to come from a user, which means the client has to send it, otherwise it fails. So you go here and see a sample test for this. So driver.execute script mobile colon instead of mobile colon shell, you will have to write it as plugin colon key event, and the information that is needed is just the. I'll just quickly rewrite this. So mobile colon key event, and the event is basically 187. It could be anything. And you could just install the plugin, and for installing the plugin, just go back to your package.json, build it, install it, and we should be good. It takes some time, but yeah, I think I hope you all might have got an idea about how does I have it already installed, so it should work ideally as is. So before we get to the next item or some other ideas in terms of plugins that one can build and share it to community. So we have seen so far about an internal of how does the package structure look like, how where you could start if you have an idea in terms of introducing a new standard command which is yet to be implemented or missing in a driver, or if you have an idea in terms of adding a non-standard command, the place that you need to look into is the second thing that we have looked at. And if you have an idea for a plugin, probably you could just reuse the Appium plugin template that me and Sai have built and open source part of Appium test distribution GitHub. You could just clone the template and then change bare minimum entities, and as like how we have changed here, we just change the bare minimum entity and send the Appium command, as simple as that, right? So we have seen three ways to contribute to Appium's own ecosystem, and some of the other thoughts in terms of creating a plugin could be is basically you could create a plugin to analyze the logs. So one of the painful stuff in terms of failures is we have to go through the session, and if you're running it parallelly, it is going to be pretty cumbersome. You have to go through a lot of logs and figure out which session which command belongs to which session has executed on which device. If you have so many devices connected to it, it's going to be painful, I'm sure, because it's one server, and since for a long time we are one server, and it's been handling quite a lot of requests from different devices parallelly, right? So figuring out a way and then identifying which device owns this particular instance of logs and which device has run a particular test, you can just figure that out. That could be a plugin initiative or plugin idea as well. If you are going to geek out, if you need help, feel free to reach me or Sai from the community. We are happy to help out in terms of the plugin implementations. Yep. That's on the ecosystem of contributing to Appium.
Thanks, Srini. Thank you for showing us around APM's code base and that could be made on top of it. We will take some questions from the Q&A section. People were interested in how they can start contributing towards APM. So, are there any primary channels of communication for APM contributors?
Uh, One is the discussion forum. If you have any ideas, dropping it there, or probably if anyone has tried implementing a plugin, or another place is Appium issues, or probably if you have an idea that you feel that Appium as a community should have it and it should be part of Appium's own umbrella, then we also have a Slack channel for developers. Feel free to drop in and join, and if you wanted to have any development related questions, we are happy to assist out there.
Uh, yeah, ask, are there any good tools from where they can start from to start contributing in?
In terms of starting, probably the place to start is look out for any feature requests that are already there, or any issues that people are facing it. That could be a starting place to grab some ideas in terms of how you could go about it. And if you need any help in terms of how it has already happened, I mean, how as a small PR has gone into the ecosystem, right? Look out for the PRs that has been already merged. And if you have a doubt, create a PR and feel free to ask your doubts. So if you have a thought process, create an issue and see if you could, if the, I mean, if the feature already exists or someone else have tried it in the community. So that's one. And in terms of videos, we myself and Sai have presented in Test Mu as well on how we could create a. We even created a plugin live. So if it's about plugin, probably you can go back and refer to that video in our YouTube channel of Lambdatest. That will help you out as well in terms of starting on plugin development.
Thank you, Shimon. There's one last question. If I want to start contributing to APM, how can I ask for mentorship from the maintainers if I get stuck at some point? So,
Yes, the other channels that I've said will definitely help you out. There are someone or other available to help you out if you got stuck. Uh, if it's something that needs an improvement from Selenium, even the folks from Selenium are also active on those community on those Slack channel. If you have any development related questions, I'm sure there are Appium members available 24/7 because of the geographical distribution. So to help you out.
I think from my experience, people should start contributing, and the open source contributors and maintainers are the most welcoming community. And all this, you just start, and everything would just fall into place. Uh, that I think that's the end of the session. Thank you, Penny. Thank you for joining us, celebrating the month of open source with us, and thank you for your insightful session on APM's code bases and its ecosystem.
Thanks, Bas. Thanks everyone for joining in. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful time.
Thank you. Thank you.